Hello, my name is Mystery Cube 7 and today I'll be showing you part 2 of my Windows 2000 PC build. Here we start out on the desktop, which I have set with a Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild background. Um, I'm running this on my 1080p 144Hz monitor, but sadly I can't run above 60 Hz or else it breaks, probably because my graphics card can't handle it. My graphics card is a NVIDIA Quadro NVS 280 PCI, and on my second monitor, it's running on the integrated ATI Rage Pro Turbo AGP. It's a mouthful to say. And I just had Task Manager open on that, which shows me my CPU and memory usage. I have an Intel Celeron 500 megahertz with one core and 120 256 megabytes of SD-RAM. Now, on this Windows 2000 PC build, unfortunately, I could not get DirectX 9 to work, even though I have the latest graphic drivers for my GPU, and the GPU supports DirectX 9. You can see right here there's an error. If I go to Display 2, it says DDI version 7 or higher, hardware accelerated direct 3D 9 is not available because the display driver does not support it, which I don't know why it won't work, but it won't. As for general use of the PC, things seem snappy enough. I mean, I've definitely seen worse. PC can get a little sluggish at times, and since it's so old, I've only been able to get 3 games to run on here, and they're all installed using the CD-ROM drive built in to the computer with IDE. And those 3 games are Chuzzle Deluxe, Roller Coaster Tycoon, and Roller Coaster 1. So here I'll start up Chuzzle Deluxe. And then unfortunately hardware acceleration just does not work because it requires DirectX 9. So everything's being rendered by the CPU, and it's slow. It's not a great experience, but it runs. And Chuzzle's a fun game, and the fact that it runs on a system this old and this problematic is an accomplishment. After this, I'll also show you that it does render DirectX objects in the DXDiag tests. Alright, let's click play. And for some reason, the sound on this computer, like the sound for applications, just doesn't work. I don't know why, but like right now I'm playing Chuzzle, there's no sound coming out of the speakers. Let's choose casual here. I've tried it for everything, and when I go and just change the sound slider on the desktop, it produces sound. So it's quite weird. Don't know why it does that. Not really willing to put in the time to make it work. But, oh well. So as you can see, Chuzzle runs not well, but I am playing the game. Over on Task Manager side of things, CPU is in the high 90s, memory usage isn't that high, which I noticed that despite only having 256 megabytes of RAM, I never see that high memory usage. Let's just move some more things around. Alright, so you see that runs. So I'll go ahead and exit out of this game. Quit. Yes. And then I'll go back to DXDiag and show you the DirectX cube spinning around in DirectX 7, because it does work. Test Direct 3D. Yes. Yes. And there you go. It does render 3D objects, because I cannot get any 3D games to work, but it renders the cube. It works. the graphics card can render 3D, even though it should be able to with DirectX 9.0a, I believe, and OpenGL 2 support. It supports DirectX 8, but it won't work. Oh well. And just in case anybody wants to see the specs of Rage Pro Turbo AGP X2, 4 megabytes of RAM, some monitor I have it plugged into, and this GPU doesn't even, it supports DirectX 6. It doesn't even support DirectX 7 according to the Tech Power Up page for it, but it renders the cube on 7, which really confuses me because it shouldn't be able to. I don't understand that at all, but oh well. And then I'll also show, before we get to the two other games, because they require me to go grab DVDs, or not DVDs, CDs, because you can't run DVDs because the BIOS is too old. I will go and go to Settings, Control Panel, go to over here to Display, Screensaver, and the 3D Maze, which is rendered in OpenGL, along with all the other OpenGL things. It's just 3D Mazes, my favorite personally. You can see it going right here, rendering the maze. Let's go ahead and preview it. The interesting thing about this is it works fine, except for the fact that because the CPU is so old, you can see it here, it's sluggishly slow. It is rendering 3D, but it's being very limited by the CPU, because the CPU is quite old. As you can see, it crawl up to the ceiling as the wall extends. But it does render. This is 3D rendering, but it's not that great. And unfortunately, I can't put a better CPU in this, mostly because I don't even know what I'd put in it. Oh boy, here we go spinning. Now we're upside down. But this works. All the other screensavers work. I'll test our one, see if they're as slow as this one. I don't know. Unfortunately, I don't have the camera set up, and I can't really get it set up so you can see Task Manager, which is where you'd see it's pinned at 100% usage. And the screensaver is going onto their monitor, which I find interesting. If I had the ability to, I'd hook up 6 monitors and a NVIDIA surround configuration, see what it looks like then. Alright, well, that's enough of that. Alright, I'll show you some of the other ones. We'll do Pipes. I like that one. Pipes runs fine, which I'm guessing that's not very CPU intensive, more graphics intensive, so that's why it's performing fine, because the graphics card is quite newer than the rest of the system. There, it fades away. So that one runs well. Let's see. 3D text. Ooh, 3D text does not seem to run that well. It'll probably be because of the CPU being bottlenecking the system. Let's see. Yep, CPU usage was pinned at 100. Which is interesting because in the little previews here, they run fine. It's going quite fast. Alright, flying objects. Let's preview that. That's on the second monitor, so all you see is black screen. How unfortunate. I wonder if it'll go over to the main monitor here. It seems to be moving. Yep, there we go. On the edge there. Oh, I just now noticed that the camera's autofocus was off focus. That's unfortunate. Anyway, 3D objects, it works. Probably, yeah, CPU usage was pinned at 100 as well, but it works. And flower box. Flower box is also quite bottlenecked as it transitions on the second monitor. Alright. And again, with that 100% CPU usage. Alright. The next game I'll play is Roller Coaster Tycoon 2 because I have the disc for that already in. No disc inserted. Do I not have the disc in? I don't. Alright. Roller Coaster Tycoon 2. This game, I unfortunately can't tell if it's I can't tell if it's using hardware acceleration because things like MSI Afterburner and its overlay that tells you what API something's using and how much usage it's using in your GPU and other system components does not work on Windows 2000. I tried, it installed, but it won't run. So I can't tell if the CPU usage at 100 is because there's no hardware acceleration working, because I don't know how the hardware acceleration works, or if it's because it's just using the CPU at 100 because the CPU isn't up to spec. Here it loads. Though I would consider the game playable. I think it might be a CPU issue because, oh boy, Windows unknown driver. I feel like this isn't going to want to work for the recording. No, it is. Interesting. Go ahead and click on new game. It's interesting because when I'm not by all the action in the parks, the frame rate seems to improve. So it might be using hardware acceleration. There's just a CPU bottleneck, which would be understandable because there's a whole one core with a whole 500 megahertz available to use. Alright, we're booted into the game. Let's start a new game. Let's do, I don't know. I want to click on something. Rainbow Summit. Something that already has a bunch of stuff in there instead of just an empty plot. Alright. So, CPU is pinned at 100. It is quite stuttery, even away from the action. So I wouldn't really call this a playable experience. I mean, it is playable, but it is quite slow. Not a pleasant experience. But it's running and it's rendering, so that's something. Alright. Let's move on to Roller Coaster Tycoon 1. I have to load to quit the game. How interesting. Oh, it loads me back to the main menu. Alright, I'll go ahead and exit the game. Let me get Roller Coasters Tycoon 1. And let's launch that up. Start programs, Hasbro Interactive Roller Coaster Tycoon. Alright, new game. Let's do the expansion pack. Or should we? I don't know. Funtopia, let's choose that one. Because the base game that comes on the CD-ROM as the parks, and then there's 2 expansions, and the way you install the expansions is through the DLC discs. So something you could have done back in the day if you played this game was borrow your friend's copy of the real game, just buy the DLC or acquire the DLC from somewhere and put it in, because it doesn't require the base disc if you install the DLC. It only requires the DLC disc as digital rights management. So I have the disc and the real game. Uh, I don't know where I bought it, but I think it's interesting how DLC worked back before the internet was a big thing. And here you can see it's stuttery here, but if I go out to like here, it's not as stuttery. It's running smoother. But like over here, you can definitely see the frames drop. CPU usage has been at 100, which I don't know why, but definitely seems a lot smoother. Alright, I'd consider this playable, because yes, it is stuttery, but let's say I just want to plant some trees. Like, it definitely is playable. You just don't really want to be moving your camera around a bunch like this, because then it does not go well. Alright, so that concludes the 3 games I have to show you working on this system. Next, I'll move on to what it can do besides just play games. Oh, before that, I forgot to mention, I tried the built-in Windows 2000 games, like for example 3D Pinball, and I don't know why, but hardware acceleration doesn't want to work on them. And it's interesting, because when I had Windows Millennium Edition installed on this computer, it worked fine. But with Windows 2000, it's just it doesn't really run that well. The CPU goes to 100, and the mouse will like move around without you touching it. Like right now, I'm not touching the mouse, and it's moving around. As you can see, the background gets all weird, and the game runs. Like here, I'll launch the pinball, and I can move the bumpers. And it might be hardware accelerated, and it's just the CPU holding it back like most other things. Like if I mash the 2 bumper buttons, like right now it's frozen. It freezes the game if I mash both of them. So if I mash one of them, it seems to run. The CPU pinned at 100, probably just the CPU, which is, I'd say, the biggest bottleneck of this system. Is a system that came with 95, I believe, Windows 95. So it runs, you just can't mash the bumpers. And also you can't move the mouse because it will be weird. Solitaire, Free Cell, and Minesweeper all run fine. If they didn't, that would be an issue, because there's no reason for them to not run fine. Yes, I closed it. Anyway, now moving on to what you can do besides play games. Well, you can look at pictures, you can use the built-in programs like Paint to draw a picture, WordPad to read text documents. If you have any like video files or music files, you could watch or listen to them, provided your sound is working, which mine isn't for whatever reason. Don't know. And then also, I installed on here I installed Microsoft Office 2003, because it comes on CD-ROM, which is the best I can do. And I tried 2007 by using a USB disk drive, and it said it was too old. So I also installed Microsoft Encarta and Microsoft Money and Works, which I'll admit I don't use nearly any of them. I use Office, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, but the rest of those I don't really use. But if you do, you can run them on Windows 95. Not 95, Windows 2000. It's weird. If you're wondering why I made this video, what's the point? What's like this computer's weird. The case is weird. The motherboard's weird, CPU's weird. Everything about it is weird. Power supply isn't the original one. Doesn't even fit in the case. Well, the reason I made it was because I wanted to see what can you do on this computer. And besides doing basic things like running Office and I don't know, painting a picture in MS Paint, you can't really do much. It can't even run older games because of the CPU bottleneck. And I can't install any newer versions of Windows on it where I might be able to run more programs. Like XP would be the next step up because XP requires. Or wait. I tried installing XP on this, but I couldn't get it to work. The system kept crashing. I could probably get it to work with a little more persuasion. But Windows 2000 is I could just grab an image off of WinWorld, burn it to a CD, and install it. Whereas XP, you can't really do that. So this ends this part of the video. I have another part after this. Thank you for watching this far, and see you in a couple seconds. Ah, it's 20 minutes.